Alright, so I think I'm about a week and a half out of practice on the doing videos now, so we're back to killing some time. Not as much as it could have been. I actually started doing a video yesterday. I got like 50 minutes in before I hit a button on the side of my phone and like stopped it and messed it up before I was done, so then I was like, fuck it, just deleting it. So yeah. And the reason for deleting it was I feel like since I went away for a little bit, because I went to Oklahoma to help my brother's family move, I feel like I would like to be slightly less on the pessimistic end of the crabby side of me. And sometimes it gets a little difficult. And yesterday was kind of one of those things. It's like, there were these points that I wanted to talk about, but then I found myself still wandering to more of the heavy, dense bullshit, right? And it's like, it's like, why'd I have to do that again, right? So, yeah, so maybe we will not do that today. It is still something that I am working on because that has been the natural inclination my entire life. I've tended to be very pessimistic and am trying to not let that just be the way it is. I was telling my brother and sister-in-law yesterday that I feel like when I was driving home, it's like the entire day was fine, right? I left Oklahoma at 12:30. Got back to Indiana. I'm not sure what time I actually got back in the state. But didn't get back to my hometown until 3:30. And I told them, it's like, the whole day was great. I had no problem staying awake, but it was like something shifted. Like as soon as I crossed the state line, it's like it felt kind of like my energy was being pulled on again, and like just this dense, heavy, gross feeling energy the entire way back home. And it's like, start getting really wiped out and all that crap too. It's like, ugh. Not my favorite thing in the world. But they said they both understand that feeling very much. There was one morning I was over at their house. Wanted to say it was either the day I left or the day before. And I was just thinking, I was going through my normal affirmation process and meditation time. And I was just thinking that it felt lighter, like just being in a different space, so much farther away from home. It's like it really just felt lighter. And I maintained that until I hit the state border. And it's like, ugh, gross. So yeah, feel like that probably fits in with why people would generally say it's a good idea to leave your hometown. And even when I was in Alabama, I remember talking to my aunt at one point, and my mom's youngest sister, and talking to her about how much freer it felt being down on the coast, right? And being so close to the water. Of course, I love water. A very strong pull to the water for me. It's like, I don't know. I told her back then, it's like, I don't know what it is. Like, I don't feel like it should be the trees, but yet somehow there's something about this state or this place that is just very blah. And she's like, the trees are confining or something. And it's like, yeah, no, that doesn't make sense. It's like, but it's something about being around the water was freer. And of course, now that I've spent some time really learning about the energetic side of things and realizing that, a lot of what I was feeling was probably my family's energy pulling on me. and that being like the big reason that I didn't like being up here so much as down there. I loved being on the Gulf Coast. I did not love the company, obviously. Oh, and yesterday was my 6-year divorce anniversary. So there's a little happy side note as well. And it was kind of funny because I was journaling about it last night, and yesterday I officially left the company that I was doing respite care with Gracie through, and I knew I wasn't going to continue with them after she was gone, but I was debating on whether I should do the mandatory training that I was getting hounded about when they thought there was a potential that I might be willing to work with other people. They said, like, once you get notice that it's mandatory for you to complete these trainings, then you have 2 weeks from the date you found out to complete them. Well, today was that 2-week cutoff for me. And of course, last week was all chaotic, helping my brother and my niece get packed up so they could move out to Oklahoma with his wife, who's been there since April because she took a job out there, and it's taken this long for the house to sell and all that stuff. So I didn't do it last week, and then, it's getting hounded about it this week, and I'm hoping that you have gotten into the thing and started paying attention to it, started working on this, because it's a lot of reading and blah, 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 and it's like, I thought about doing it just for the paycheck, for like one final paycheck, and then, call it quits after that. But I got into the training and all the reading, and I was just like, I can't do this. It was just like, I already know that I'm not going to be working with other people in the community, and I feel like I'm glad that I had the opportunity to have that, working with Gracie with her autism and all that fun stuff as a temporary source of income. But at the same time, I would not feel right about dragging anybody else into my chaos, because there were times where, there would be a quarterly meeting where we would get together and be like the case manager, the girl that I essentially was reporting to, but I can't remember her title or anything, me, and then my brother and sister-in-law, and sometimes the kid would join us and sometimes not, because of course they want it to be person-centered, so the person that you're caring for is supposed to be there, but she hated those meetings too. So it was not uncommon to get I had this one day, I remembered all week the week before that I had that meeting, and then for whatever reason that day I completely spaced it. It's like, fuck. My brother sends me a message like, are you coming? It's like, oh, crap. It's like I didn't remind myself yesterday, and then it just didn't occur to me again the day of. So, like that kind of stuff. It's like I don't really want to drag other people into my stuff that I've been trying to work through and navigate through, when I know that's not something I really want to be doing. It was something that was really nice to have for the time. I mean, especially because it was shortly after I moved back up here from Alabama to, go through the whole divorce process, that my cousin that works with special needs kids said this was the thing that we could do, and she kept encouraging it for a long time before it even actually went through. But then once we finally got the wheels turning in that direction, then it became a thing that was actually possible. And of course, part of that was they had to get her enrolled in the services with the state and all that stuff as well, which, it's not far off from what I was doing, because I've worked in mental health for shy of a decade, and I had a personal care attendant job for some disabled students when I was an undergrad. It was like, that's a thing that has been common on my path, so it made sense that it would be something that I could do with her as well. And then, of course, since it gave me something to have as an income, which it wasn't a huge one by any means, but it was still enough of one that there was something at times when nothing else was working out, right? I had a couple other jobs in there, a couple other factory jobs for a time, and then, both of those, I was thinking about this too, both of those jobs I left to focus on writing, because I know that the writing is the thing that I've always been supposed to be doing, but 11 there's always been these things that have come up that kind of like, I guess, gotten me off that path. Like after I left the Amazon job, I had gotten into meditations after I started doing the Victor Otto and Aaron Dowdy classes and stuff that they had, and got into meditation, got into trying to actually do the thing that I knew I was supposed to be doing, which is writing, is a huge part of it. The snag was I didn't fully know the direction of what I was supposed to be talking about, right? So I would essentially start on writing, I get my routine going, and then be this regular thing, and I'd start building momentum, and then it's like I would just hit a wall, because it's like, I know it's like memoir type stuff, right? I know that, like the whole suicidal ideation thing was a piece of the journey, a necessary piece of what I was supposed to be talking about to some degree. The snag, or where I would hit the brick wall, was the point of shifting completely into remembering that feeling to the point where I couldn't get back out of it, and then it would just like, I couldn't go any further. So it's like, I know it's a piece of the story, it's not the full story, right? But see, so I started doing the YouTube thing, and it's been a means of talking through things and getting it out of my system, so it's not just something that I'm carrying all the time. And that's been huge. But like really coming to realize that the bigger part of the story that I'm supposed to be telling is the piece where it's not just that and being stuck in this suicidal ideation space all the time. It's knowing that there's something much bigger going on. Okay, I've talked about the twin flame thing on here a ridiculous amount of times, because it's kind of a big part of it, because that's kind of a big piece of the thing that has forced me to move beyond myself, to heal through the heavy stuff that I was carrying, that, the brick wall piece, for just like the past, right? For me, and my tendency to shift into the pessimistic side of things, it basically required there to be something beyond me pulling me to keep moving at times I would rather have shut down. And that's been kind of the twin flame thing. It's been a huge part of it. It's literally the thing that has forced me to keep going. I need to lose my hoodie. Hold on. Okay. So, there have been times that I talk about it more than others on here. But there's been these points where it's like, I feel like I'm supposed to be talking about this more than I am. So then I started doing it. And then I started actually opening up about specific details for who the person is and all this stuff, right? So it's like this thing that is basically calling me to keep moving and to not just quit and disappear into myself like I always would have before and always did before. Like if I didn't have that, I'd go full crap and just like go into hiding, right? So like that's the biggest thing that I've found with doing this journey is like I've had those very real moments of, I would start, and it's always like in visions first. It's like I start seeing myself speak out about things that I knew didn't sit right with me, largely family stuff, right? And, I've talked about the little vision sort of thing that I had where there was like this music video that I kept watching over and over again. And I just kept hitting play and just listening to the song. I wasn't really watching the video. I was cleaning my room, but I just kept replaying the song, right? And it got me to this point where like I got really this really animated outburst in my head with yelling at my mom and my grandmother about just because you stayed somewhere doesn't mean you stayed because you loved somebody. It meant you tolerated bad behavior because you thought there was nothing better. You were afraid that if you didn't stay there, nothing better would ever come of it, right? So then it's like there's this big outburst kind of vision that I see myself being really animated about. And then all at once it shifts and I end up feeling energetically like I'm in this space of this music video that I clearly was not on the set of by any means, but it's just all at once energetically it felt like I was there. And then it was this sort of shifting into feeling this panic of, the discomfort, because I went from yelling at my mom and my grandmother in this one vision to it shifts into this space where I'm with these guys that I've never met in actual life. And, I find myself there and needing to like go lean up against a wall somewhere and just like kind of put my hoodie over my head and go into hiding again, because that's what I've done in my lifetime is go into hiding, right? And when I was journaling about the little experience of this transition with this vision, I had this sense, it's like I found myself focusing on feeling awkward and exposed. And, I was just like talking about how like with like hermit crabs when they go in between their shells and how awkward and weird looking they are. And, I got really fixated on just this feeling of being awkward and exposed and, and being seen by anybody else, and then I imagine this conversation with these guys and just needing to, kind of hide myself in the moment and, saying that I just feel really exposed right now and that's very uncomfortable. And when I was writing about it, I had the realization that, yes, there's the exposure piece, but the more important part of it was they have to come out of their shell in order to go into the next shell, right? They've outgrown the space, so they have to risk the exposure piece by leaving the old shell behind so they can find a shell that is more suitable for where they're at now. And it's like, that's essentially what was going on in that space, right? So, just very, okay, how did I get there? It just that whole exposure thing, right? So I felt exposed, right? That's been a huge part of my path, is I've always gone into hiding. It's like, and, I've talked a lot about how I didn't really even realize that, like in middle school and high school, that was something that I did, was go disappear into the bathroom just to be away from the other energies, and so other people wouldn't see my energy and experience my energy as much just from me walking through the hall, because I was not confident in my energy at all. And I always, I always took the piece where it's like, other people seem to have a big problem with me. Just my existence seemed to trigger a lot of people, like in high school especially. I've talked about the bullies, I've talked about my grandfather being a bully, and, and how just he always didn't like me, right? I was the scapegoat and all this stuff, right? So, just stuff like that. And it's just interesting because I have this Rebecca Campbell Starseed Oracle deck that, before I left the house to do this video, I got this really strong sense that I was supposed to pull a couple cards from it, right? And the first card out was "You're Not for Everybody." It's like, so there's that, right? So that, and trust the timing, because there's the two big things before I left the house. Those were the only two cards I read. There were 4 other cards that I grabbed, one other that came out, and then 3 others that were on the back of the deck that seemed really relevant, so I pulled them. But I didn't go ahead and read through what they had to say or anything. But, going back to not being for everybody, when I was growing up, I was very aware that my existence seemed to be a problem for a lot of people in my life, right? So I was always trying to shrink myself to conform and to fit into other people's standards, to try to be okay with existing. And that's not what I'm supposed to be doing, right? I'm not supposed to shrink myself to fit what other people think I should or shouldn't do, or should or shouldn't be, or whatever. It's like, I'm not supposed to be shrinking for other people. I'm not for everybody. And that's kind of an end thought, right? That's the full thing. I am not for everybody. It took me a really long time to be okay with that. Only like 42 years. So, yeah. And even then, I've talked about, before I left Alabama that last time, there was something with Keanu Reeves in the news, and then all at once he was everywhere, and everybody was talking about all these stories of just how great of a person he was and all this stuff. And I was sitting there in this really shitty existence with my now ex, and I kept seeing all this stuff with Keanu Reeves, and it just, one day it hit me, and it was just like, that intuitive voice was like, if there's one, there are others. Those are your people. Find your people. Right? So it was like kind of the final release on really knowing that I was not supposed to be in the situation I was in, and no matter how miserable I allowed myself to be because I was conditioned to think that that was okay or whatever, that wasn't where I was ever meant to be, right? That's not my people, right? The ones that want to just sit there and live in the illusion and, judge everybody else and all that crap. It's like, that's not the kind of existence that I want. It's like, just because it's the one that I've been used to, because that was literally the reason I was able to get into that situation, that's wasn't for me, right? So I had to find my way back out of it, but that whole, it was like, I've talked about Keanu as, beacon, right? For those of us who have had to go through our shit and struggled to get out of it, right? So, in my shit was getting into a toxic marriage situation that I felt stuck in, and I was having a very hard time leaving, and then all at once, something happens, and he's like everywhere on social media and everything, and everybody's just talking about how wonderful he is, and it's like, those are your people. Find them. It's like, oh, okay. And then I pulled his card, right? So, yeah. Anyway, how did I get up to, oh, there, okay. So I left the job, right? I think that's where I wandered. So I knew that job wasn't for me. I'm not meant to be doing that stuff anymore, right? And it's not because there's anything wrong with those type of service type positions. That's not what I'm supposed to be doing. Yes, I can, pour my entire existence out in tending to other people's needs and trying to help them have some sort of better life in some kind of way, but I'm not supposed to sacrifice myself completely in order to do that. And so, like with Gracie, the biggest thing was, okay, I was already spending a lot of time with her anyway, so it just happened to be a bonus that I could also get paid to do this thing, which, I mean, hang out with and teach whatever skills I can help her with as she's my niece, right? But also, just, I mean, the emotional side of things was kind of the big piece, and I think, honestly, with that job, it was more like, as I really started making the connections for my own life with the toxic family situation and the importance of setting boundaries and all this stuff, I started talking to her parents about setting boundaries, and then it's like, we were noticing how differently she responded to being around me and my brother versus being around our parents, right? And just that energetic thing. And going back to that piece of not being for everybody, whenever my mom was sitting at the table and Gracie was sitting next to her at the table, and I would be over leaning against the kitchen counter, looking on my phone or whatever, just being in that space. I've always known that my mom has not particularly cared for me, right? So, going back to the whole energetic piece, I just always knew that, right? I've known very, very clearly when people have problems with me just being there. I feel that all the way through. And it has been that way with my mother for my entire life, trying not to shift to the pessimistic Cancer side of me, but also addressing this point for the story purposes. It's like, I didn't have to be doing anything, just being in that space. Gracie would randomly start lashing out at me. She would go off on, she'd start screaming, going after me, and I wasn't doing anything but being there. My mom wasn't necessarily doing anything but being there, but yet that energetic component where Gracie was picking up on how she felt toward me, it's like it made the kid shift and put that full force on me. So there was a span of time where it was like, it got to a point where when she was acting that way, it was easier just to not be around, but that was one of the things that I've been learning on this whole journey too, is that kid picks up on all this stuff, right? All these energetic cues. She might not have had any actual idea what was going on, but she was picking it up and throwing it out there. However, so for my mom not liking me, then Gracie would shift that, negative attention my way as well. And it's like, okay, but then when we got to the situations where my mom was less involved and she was spending more time with her mom and dad and then more time around me after being around them, so they don't have the problem with me that my mom did. It's like she was a whole different kid, so the pandemic was like this great thing because it allowed her to start spending more time with her parents, because before they'd been working a lot and she was over at grandma's house all the time. It was fine, except for that energetic piece, right? So, I've talked a lot about my mom's feelings and how she's directed her energies toward me. And she's done the same to my brother, but slightly differently, because for him, it seemed like she favored him because it was the son, and the oldest, but also I don't even know how to explain that one. 111. But it's like, okay, my brother and I always knew that he was the favorite and I was not, right? And then as more of the grandkids were born, it's like there were specific groups that were the favorite and others that were not, right? And I was always the original least favorite, right? So that being said, my brother, while he was my mom's and my grandparents' favorite between the two of us, I feel like it was because at some level he was more manipulatable. Because they just kind of relied on his good nature, and he was around them before I was because he's 2.5 years older. But then when I came around, I was finally born, then he also experiences that where something's different because I'm there as well, right? But like for the conversations we've had, it's like he's always known that he was the favorite because there was no way he couldn't not know that. But he wasn't okay with it. And I've talked a lot about how I've always had a strong protective instinct toward the good guys. And my brother's always been lumped into that. And what I always used to think of that as was just the guys that are genuinely not trying to bring harm to anybody else and yet somehow keep getting fucked over themselves in the process, right? They're trying to be good, they're trying to be helpful and make things better for other people, and yet they're still getting shat upon, right? So he was, because he has a good heart, my mom and my grandparents could kind of manipulate that aspect of him and, send it my direction. So like the bad things to my direction even more, right? So, yeah. So, that was, it's kind of weird to think of this as, like, connected with the employment aspect of it, like with the Gracie end of things. But this is largely, as I've been piecing some of that together, like the being able to get paid to work with Gracie because of her autism also allowed me the space to be able to process through some of the stuff because I was starting to see it better, right? It's like, on specific days where I was just standing in the kitchen in the same room as my mom and Gracie would, like, out of nowhere start lashing out at me. That's like all I was trying to do was exist in the space. And then suddenly it was a problem, right? But then it's like I always knew how my mom felt about me, so it's like, I think that's the key, right? So anyway, the job situation was largely important for me on this whole path for that purpose. But also, since she's moved halfway across the country now, I don't want to try to bring anybody else into the chaos that is me existing in this damn town. Right? It's unfortunate that I'm still in this town. It's temporary, I know this, but for right now, it's where I am, right? And I'm surrendering to this existence. This is where I am right now, and I mean, I'm not going to lie about that. 42 years old, and I've been back in my parents' house for 6.5 years now, and it's not ideal. It sucks, but I needed it to learn these lessons too. So now that Gracie is out of the area, it's like I really just, this is not the work that I want to be doing on that end, right? So I wasn't going to continue it. But anyway, this kind of silly thing happened. Every now and then, it's not uncommon. Something that I do is I will find like little posters and things that I like, and I will put them in a way that I'm not even thinking about them until one day they suddenly mean something different, and or mean more than what they did when I put them there. Right? So like, for an example, because I had 2 factory jobs that I had for a while and then left to focus on writing, I got this poster that it's like a typewriter, and it just says write in capital letters. And I put that on my desk because it's like I need to, kind of that reminder. And also it's kind of a command writing, or a command piece as well. So yeah. So anyway, the other day when I was in Oklahoma with my brother's family, he and his wife went into Best Buy and were looking at TVs because they went ahead and sold what they had and decided to get new out there. And they were taking a long time, and Gracie asked if we could go to Five Below. It's like, I got no problem with that. I called my brother, make sure they were going to be there for a little bit longer. I said, hey, Gracie asked to go to Five Below, so we're going to go run over there for a little bit. And he said, that was fine. So we went over there and we just like wandered all the way through the store, and I was just like finding random things. It's like, ooh, I should take this. I should get some of this. These kind of things. I'm like, we go past the makeup, and it's like, oh yeah, I have like these 2 things that I wanted to get, and I know they have some of them, so I go ahead and do that. And then she was finding little things, and then we found like a little, like a neon light sort of thing that's an outline of Stitch. She has a Stitch bathroom rug, so it's like, hey, bet she would like that in her space, right? So, we got that, and then just some little odds and ends. But I found these things, there's like vision board things, or posters, and I was really drawn to them. And I got this one set while I was down there. And then I went through them and I pulled some out that I thought Gracie might like, and I left those for them. And when I got back up here, there was something else that, this is silly, but there was this little, she got it was like a big rubber duck. And the one she picked up originally had like tattoo kind of looking designs on it. And I really liked it. I'm just like, interesting. Okay. And then the one she ended up wanting was like this tie-dyed one. It was like blue with like pink and purple spots or whatever. And it looked like a little tie-dye number. So she got that one. My thought was that recently it's like, I just felt like I should go see if they had those up here. Well, they do. They didn't have the little tattoo one that I liked. Not that I need toys, but it is what it is, y'all. That was the reason I went over to Five Below. I mean, also, it's right next to Aldi's up here, and I wanted to go there for chocolate milk. And so that was kind of my starting point. But yeah, I ended up at Five Below and found these vision board things again. Well, they had they had the other set that they had in Oklahoma that I hadn't gotten. And then they had this other one, and I picked them up, and some of the ones the pictures they had were the same or slightly different. Like, one set has the shot where it's like looking out an airplane window and it's colorized, and then the other one has the same image, but it's black and white. But that wasn't the one that drew me in or whatever, but, it had other things that I just, for whatever reason, I was just, like, really drawn to them. It's like, okay, I'm getting them, right? And it says they're $4, whatever, I'm getting them. I feel like I'm supposed to have them in my space. So, I made it hit my phone, sorry. So I got them. And first off, when I went up to the register, I don't know what my deal was that day. It's like I was just feeling very quiet. And maybe partly because I wasn't like doing the whole makeup thing. It's like I had my hair up and everything, but I didn't have any makeup on or whatever. It's just like, whatever. Just wasn't, I knew that day I wasn't going to do a video. But yeah. When I got to the register, it's like, wasn't being rude or anything. I was just quiet, right? So the girl was mainly talking to the other girl there, and I was just there, right? But I did see that when she rang up these vision board things, the little sticker on them says $4, and they actually rang up $5. I wasn't going to say anything, because it was just one of those things. It's like, I don't really know how big of a deal I feel like it is at the moment. But the girl caught it and was like, hey, how do you change the price? She's talking to the other girl, and then, she's like, well, you have to talk to the manager or whatever, have her come down or whatever. So she did that, right? So it's like this big thing, and it was just her being nice, and I was just being quiet and everything. And I don't know, just the interaction, the energy with it was interesting to me. And it just felt like there was something with me not going, just being receptive to whatever the universe is bringing my way, kind of a thing, right? And, I wasn't going to push anything on it one way or another, but she caught it, so she made the effort, and it's like, ow, what's my wrist just locked up on me? And a cardinal just flew past. Anyway, I think I got like a little tendonitis action from my death grip on the steering wheel going through the hills and, the windy ass roads in, I think, Illinois and Missouri. It sucked. But I had like a death grip on the steering wheel, and I didn't really realize how much so until at one point, like, I was talking to my brother on the phone, Bluetooth on the car speaker thing, and I was like, man, it's like, this is like killing my wrists. But anyway, so I end up with these posters, right? And yesterday, night before, I went ahead and I went through all of them and pulled out the ones that really stood out the most. And one of them said trust the process. Both sets had that one in it, and they look exactly the same, but that's okay. Because, you can always use reminders to trust the process. And then there was another one, said the universe provides, right? So yesterday, I'm working on, I'm having this thought of, there is no way I'm going to even I'm just not interested in wasting my time on this mandatory training for something that I know I'm not going to continue at all. And I went ahead and put in my notice with the girl that I was ready to be done and all that stuff. But as I was kind of working through the stressing myself out process, I sent her the message night before last, also, after I hung up the posters. And I think I was actually journaling about something, or about this whole, the job situation, and how it's that uncomfortable space of knowing that I don't want to do that, and I'm not going to do that any further, but then also the questions that arise for where's the income going to come from then? Because that's not, I mean, but even if I stay, it's like, you know, I wasn't going to be spending time with Gracie like I was, and she's not covered by the state anymore. So it's like, you know, so it's like, that's not something I would be able to do anyway. But as I was writing about it and just kind of going back and forth with, you know, I don't want to do these trainings flat out. And as I've said many times, you know, I had the realization somewhere along the line that if it is not a hell yes, it is a fuck no. And it was not a hell yes to do those trainings. So it was time to be done with it, right? Well, I noticed where I hung up these posters and, you know, I just was like, okay, this is a good spot for this. This is a good spot for this. In that moment, when I was writing about it, I look up and I see them all together. I mean, of course, there's space. I could probably easily put other posters in between them all because they're not right next to each other. But the way that they're up there, it looks like it says, right, the universe provides, trust the process. So it's like all at once there's this whole combined message that's even more so than the message that I got from any of the three of them. It's like comes together for like this greater effect. And hey, a reminder, because I'm going back and forth on this whole thing and wondering if, you know, if it's worth it to do the training for one last paycheck. And it's just like, it was not. But I just have been feeling really strongly that it is time to focus on the writing. And of course now, you know, I've talked about a little bit earlier, it's like the reason it didn't work out before was because I didn't have something that was basically the enticing piece, the carrot on the string, if you will, drawing me out of myself and making me continue moving, right? So then as I've been doing this whole journey, I realized that like the name, the birth date, the initials, all these things have been following me my entire life. That's the bigger part of the story, right? All these synchronicities for something that before I had the right information, they didn't mean anything to me, right? It was just like, I mean, the name one following me around seemed like it meant something, but I didn't really know what to do with it. Although I had a couple misplaced crushes, I think, because of the name along the way. But yeah, it's like, yeah, that wasn't it. Right? But now that I have more of the information, you know, I've talked a lot about how I feel like the whole YouTube channel, like the purpose of this is foundation building, right? So bringing things together. It's the sorting through the density that I've been carrying, releasing some of that, and allowing myself to have something that is the proverbial carrot on the string that is pulling me out of myself and forcing me to keep going at times I otherwise would not have. So, yeah. And now I feel like a big part of why their move got delayed as long as it did was because there were still some pieces to this that I needed to have in place before, you know, I was really ready to focus on the thing I'm supposed to be doing, right? And then now, of course, since, you know, Gracie's in another state and that's no longer an option, it's just like, now what, right? And it goes back to that, right? The universe provides, trust the process. Again, that message has been like, oh my God, I get that message everywhere. It's come from several tarot readings and several things that I've read otherwise myself, and just, you know, then I got these fucking things because they had posters in it. It's like, yep, I need that in my space. So yeah. But on the way, I wrote a thing about it last night that I posted on YouTube. So, anyway, when my brother and I were on the way out to Oklahoma, of course, he was driving the moving truck, and I was driving the car with his kid and his 2 dogs and my 1 dog that was my company on the way back. And on the way out there, we're talking on the phone because it's overnight, it's late, we're both tired and trying to stay awake and all that stuff. And, we can entertain each other pretty well. So we're talking, and I was just like, this situation right here, this driving situation, is basically a metaphor for my life. It's like, so we're driving these windy ass roads. It's the middle of the night. It's like, I don't know, 1 or 2 in the morning probably. My fucking arms are killing me because I have a death grip on the steering wheel. And I was talking to him at one point. It's like, I don't feel like I can use cruise control in this situation because I don't know what the road's doing, right? It's like, at least if I get a little nervous and end up bringing my foot up off the gas pedal a little bit, I'm going to feel sturdier and less likely to run off the side of the road or something because I don't know where the road is going, right? Because I can't see more of it than I can. And so I was talking about how, like, it's this, essentially, this is what's happening in my life. It's like, there's so little of the path ahead of me that's lit up that I can see. And yet I have to just go along with it because I know I'm on the right path, even if it doesn't make sense. Everything in me knows that I'm exactly where I'm meant to be. I said, but then there's this added complication where, it was like insanely humid or something outside, and all at once, like, the window kept sweating. It's like, I turned the windshield wipers on. It's like my already limited view of what's ahead further distorted by this, complicated thing where now the window is sweating and, like the wipers knock it off, and then immediately it's right there again. It's like, fuck, I can't see shit. I don't know what's happening. But all I know is that I'm on the right path, and I gotta keep going, right? And do the best I can and hope for the best, right? And then, like, the biggest thing is, like, the only thing that I have to rely on is, on the driving situation, my GPS and knowing that I was on the right road. For my living situation is my intuition and knowing that I'm where I'm supposed to be, because all the signs are pointing in the direction that I am where I'm meant to be. Right? And, like, the things that are, like, the random lessons that that show up that teach me in the moment what's going on. Yeah, that kind of stuff. My nose is really itchy. But it's like, that's all I have. So it's like, the biggest thing now is I don't know how things are going to turn out. I have some ideas, but I can't get locked into any one of them and just expect that that's going to be how it is, because there are lots of other factors, right? And, especially for scenarios where there are other energies at play, other people's energies at play, there are a lot of other people that will be affected by this situation, should it turn out in the way I feel like it ultimately will, right? So going back to the foundation building piece, this is part of why things have been so difficult in my life as well, is because my intuition was the biggest thing that was trying to show me where to go and trying to guide me along the way. And I would end up in situations where I would allow other people to make me question my own intuition. And then as I did that, it would chip away at, my sense of who I was and what I was here to do in the world. And then, I got to try to exist from this space in a diminished state, right? Because nobody was okay with the full expression of me. And now I'm learning to be okay with the fact that I'm not for everybody. For a long time, that was a big struggle, right? But, going back to that, the foundation building, it's like the only thing I can do is follow my intuition and follow what I know I'm supposed to be doing, even if it doesn't look like anything's happening, because that's all I got. Right? So, right, trust the process. Or right, the universe provides, trust the process. That's what I got. So, yeah. Anyway, I was thinking that the biggest piece of this whole thing is August. Since this is the biggest question marks and I have nothing lined up, I think August is where I really focus on what I'm supposed to be doing, this writing piece, and making it a priority to do the things, and there's my 5s. So, I was thinking, like, okay, I've been pretty good about, starting with, like, the affirmations and things, and meditations to have myself in a really high positive energy space. It has been a whole process getting me there, but I am much better at that than I used to be. I talked a lot about, like, when I first started this whole freaking thing, I wasn't really started. Okay, going back to the knowing that I had in my senior year in high school, where I knew that I would be 40 before things started to make sense for me. And then going along with the other one where I saw my friend Tyler, or I knew he would die, it would be his death in our mid-30s that would bring everybody back together for a time. And then I would be 40 before I started to make sense of things. Because of those two pieces, and the third knowing, which was the group of guys that I've talked about on here. Now that I've seen those things play out, it's like these were things I knew over 20 years ago. And then they happened, right? Tyler died. He was 34, and it was 10 days after my 35th birthday. And then 40 was when I started, intention setting. So when I committed my love and career over to the universe to lead, and then there was just a series of things like the lip ring and the nose rings, with the intention that I would never again work in a job that asked me to be anything less than 100% who I am. Then the 5 okay, it was the third lobes, holes, both sides, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I was like, wait, there was 5 holes, damn it. I know there was 5. I paid for 5. Yeah, good 2 years, huh? Okay. When I got those, it was that I was done shrinking myself to be who other people wanted me to be, essentially. Right? So, since then, of course, the nose rings and the lip ring were right after I turned 40. It was right after I started the Honda factory job. And it was like my first or second paycheck with them that I did that. And then, of course, since I set the intention that I would never again work in a job that asked me to be anything less than 100% who I am, and I was in a job that it didn't have a problem with the hair colors, the facial piercings, anything like that. But for the purpose of being there in the job, they don't want you to fuck up the car parts, so you have to wear the uniform, right? So that's still, in a way, something that's asking me to be less than the bright, colorful version of me that I am otherwise, right? So it was like, as soon as I set that intention, there were a bunch of things that just kept coming about to show me that that wasn't where I was meant to be. And I knew that I wasn't meant to be there. But that was a sort of stepping stone to help me develop a writing habit so I could try that again. But I still wasn't fully ready for that, right? That, of course, 40, because that was 2023, was where, of course, love and career, committed both of those things for the universe to lead. And then the twin flame thing came up, right? And then I started being made aware of all of these other elements, and I didn't believe it at first, right? So that was the biggest thing. When I got that little intuitive hit of, this is the one you've been looking for your whole life, my reaction was, yeah, right. He's out of my league, right? So I've had to come a long way on this process to buy into that. And the biggest thing was, like, as soon as I had that thought, the follow-up thought was, are you going to let us do this, or are you going to do it your way again? Because that's worked so well in the past. And it was like, what do I have to lose, right? Going back to the foundation building. Literally all I've had to go on for most of this journey is these little intuitive hits along the way. And the strong sense that this is what I'm supposed to be doing, right? And like for the writing end of things, there have been several things over the years where I have committed my life in this way. I've talked many times about getting really into the books back in undergrad. When God Writes Your Love Story, When God Writes Your Life Story. There again, at 40, committed my love and career to the universe to lead. In undergrad, I'd already had this thought. It wasn't new. It was something that was there, like, hey, this is what you're supposed to be doing. Letting the divine lead your path. And following the whims that look absolutely crazy and sound absolutely crazy, because it's part of the process of really coming to trust that I have been guided, and then that piece of realizing his name has been dancing around in the periphery all of my life, and come back to me in like big ways, right? So one example was let's just give several examples. My cousin, who was my best friend, her dad, but he had a different version of the nickname. Not a big fan of that one, but still was there. TV show I watched, father-son duo. My high school boyfriend, my first serious boyfriend, his little brother had the name. And I remember thinking specifically that is a big name for that little kid to not have any nicknames. Because, of course, he went by Richard and he didn't go by anything else. It's just like, that seems like a big, older name for this little kid to not have any kind of nicknames. Whatever. And then the, after the high school boyfriend and I broke up in undergrad, my sophomore year, his freshman year, he gets involved with somebody. He was basically involved with her before we completely broke up, and that was part of what I needed in order for the breakup to be okay, because I had to have something where he wasn't just safe enough to go back to, right? He had to be involved with somebody else, so that was not an option anymore. Her brother was also a Richard. It's like, the fuck? Okay. And then there was a girl in my Bible study that same year who was married to a Marine named Rick, and every time she said his name, and she was just like all, just completely adored him. And it's like, I felt the swoony feeling when she would say his name. It's like, what the fuck is this all about? Right? So then it's just like weird things like that. Then the big one that got my attention that I did not register for the longest time was when I was going through the legal paperwork for my ex's custody case. I knew his son's older brother was named Richard. I knew Richard's dad was also named Richard, because that was a big joke with my ex's dad was, since she didn't completely, or since she wasn't with my ex, she didn't name the child after him. Whereas the other two kids, she named the kids after the guy she was with at the time. And of course, Chris and Christopher and Richard. And so, yeah, so that was a big joke, right? But I spent hours upon hours combing through all of this paperwork to organize these things, and this name was right there in front of me nonstop, and it did not register that was yet another way that this name was following me around until after the twin flame connection came up, and it was like, wait, there it is again. And that one hit me a lot harder, because that was like months that I was going through this stuff and organizing the shit out of this case and making a rock solid argument for my ex's attorney to have all the shit in one place to clear him and his brother of the bullshit she was making the kid lie about them about. And yeah. So then there's been this whole thing, and then it's been trying to, because you start talking about the things and having actual names and actual birth dates, because I've talked about that in other videos, and I don't overlap my details in videos. Watch enough of them, you'll see the information, but that is part of the foundation building too, because that's something that has stayed the same, right? And of course, I might remember other spaces where I've seen these things and call attention to them in other videos, and I might forget one thing or another from time to time, but I usually, since I repeat myself so many times, because there again, I tell the same stories largely because, okay, if somebody is finding this video and decides they want to watch a couple of my other videos, they probably don't want to go all the way back to find the thing that I, something that I started to talk about and then wandered off from, right? So I try to give enough of the information that they don't have to go back through and try to figure out that story. But yeah, whatever. Anyway, that's why it's foundation building, because this is me having to learn how to trust myself and my intuition, and the idea that I am being guided on this journey. And so these are the reasons that I believe this. And so if they all result in this one specific thing finally happening, then I must have known something, right? And that's the point. Because I remember being in high school and having this sort of, prayer to the universe kind of a thing, where I, just kind of set the intention where it would be really cool to have the kind of story where people can see from my life that there is something more at play. Right? That God is real, and that you can know things, and that you are guided on the path, right? But then how is all that going to, how does that come together unless there is something greater in guiding the whole path, right? So go ahead and talk all crazy and just roll from there, and then see what happens. Right? So foundation building, and I've talked about the things, and then, there have been specific things where, okay, like back in the fall, there was a time where it's like, I had mentioned the twin flame thing before because I've mentioned it because of dreams and other stuff. But then it came to a point in the fall where it was like, I feel like I'm supposed to be talking about this more. And so I did allow myself to talk about it some more. But it was still uncomfortable, very uncomfortable, especially when you start giving actual information and then there's actually some kind of human attached to it somewhere out there, right? And, oh, yeah. But there again, I really liked the idea that God might give a shit about my love story and my life story and all this stuff. And, what would that look like if I allowed God to write these things through me, essentially, but requiring me to do the writing of the story as it's happening, right? So, a big part of what I've been doing is the journaling. And on I'm really close to wrapping up Journal 14, the Twin Flame books, where I've literally just been processing all the more in-depth things and like the things that I don't want to talk about on the video, because there are a few things, not very many. I've been pretty damn open about my whole life, spewing all of the bad things and not trying to make myself look glamorous. That said, there are a couple things that I feel like 111 that would be okay to keep between me and this person once he exists in my actual life space. That shouldn't be a problem either. But like, and then coming back to like points that I've talked about on here before. Like, okay, not that long ago, I did a video where I was talking about how I had this vision where essentially, it was like each video that I did was like a part of the petal of like this lotus flower, right? So maybe there's 2 videos on either side or whatever. Maybe there's a third at the bottom. I don't know. Whatever. Anyway, the point is, I had this vision where like the videos kind of served, and the storytelling served a purpose as part of a petal. Not even a full petal. Which is probably part of why it's been so complicated to keep my shit straight. But then as I was telling it recently, I realized I told that not that long ago. I've already had this vision before. This is, it's like I have to get the messages over and over again to really register them as deeply as they go. Right? So, of course, once I remembered having had this vision before and having talked about it before, then I was like, oh yeah, now it sticks. Now I remember that being the case. Now I can use that as an example of this thing that is, I don't know, part of the path, I guess. When I was going out to Oklahoma, I had this, the title, I got the title, and I'm not going to say the full title, but part of it is the story of us as told through the unfurling of me. Because that's essentially what this whole thing has been, right? Me processing my stuff so I can get the icky stuff that I don't need out of my system, so I can stop carrying that bullshit around anymore and start making sense of the stuff that I'm meant to hold on to and I'm meant to carry with me and live out and see play out in these other spaces, right? So it's like even that goes back to this story or this vision that I was talking about once that I forgot about the first time, and then I remembered the second time I was telling it that I'd told it before, and then suddenly it's part of this working, fucking title of this book that I'm supposed to be writing. And yeah, so here we are. I feel like I have done better about not shifting to the negative, pessimistic side of things on this journey. Yesterday, I did not do that successfully. Yesterday, I went negative. Today I've been trying to be better on all around on that end. And okay, risking risking the negativity for a brief moment. I've talked a lot about the dog that I didn't want, and that we're now fostering this other dog. And God, yesterday I pulled several cards that were talking about the innocent creatures and all this stuff. It's like, you're one of nature's nurturers or whatever, and it's like you can't see that there's this dog at the house that is struggling to find her place and know how she fits into this new pack situation. She's afraid of her own ass. It's not okay for me to not work with her on that. Now, I don't want another dog. I got 3 of my own. I do not need another one. And of course there's now 5 in the house because my parents they have Pepper. They have Pepper and Piper now. Cool. Pepper is 13-ish. Piper is soon to be 4. She is the rescue. And as of right now, she is a foster. I was there. Okay, they brought her. She's been there a week and a half. So she came on Sunday before I left for Oklahoma. And the big thing was, what are you doing when I'm getting ready to be leaving 2 of my dogs that aren't real reliable? I don't like for new people to be around my dogs without me there, let alone animals. Especially Taz. He's a great dog. He's a little pushy. Little. A whole lot. Love that dog. He is chaos. And the other one, she's more just skittish about everything if I'm not there. She just prefers me to be there, and then she's kind of territorial, and that's a pain in the butt too. It's like, what are you doing bringing another dog into the space when I'm getting ready to be going out of town for a while? I didn't think it would be a whole week. Actually, it wasn't a whole week. It was like 5 days. And that was like 2 days longer than it was going to be. My original thought was, they were talking about not having a place to stay while we were there because she's been staying with her brother, my sister-in-law, and he didn't want their dogs staying with them, right? So however long it took for the process of getting the house situation figured out, he didn't want their dogs there. Ideally, I was going to be there to babysit the dogs while they were signing paperwork, wherever that ended up being. At one point, my sister-in-law was talking about getting a bed and breakfast, and then she was talking about maybe not. So I ended up, I made the decisions like, look, I'm taking Ziva with me, so I have a reason to stay awake on the way back. Just because I'm more successful at keeping my shit together and staying awake if I have another life form in the vehicle with me that I care about, right? So the kids, the dogs, it was good. I was finding ways to stay awake. The way out there, I was on the phone almost constantly. Mostly with my brother until either of us would take, we'd stop at rest stops or whatever. Then when he got to Oklahoma, he was in Oklahoma. We were a little ways away. We stopped at Buc-ee's to take a nap because we were taking a nap and he was talking with his wife and all that stuff. Then my mom called, and then my aunt didn't call until later. My mom called right after I dozed off. It was like this really weird sensation because I was trying to be coherent enough to know what was going on, but I was so friggin' tired that it was like I couldn't focus on anything, and it was like there was this like kind of orange glittery swirl like a glitter lamp. It was just like this whole like weird thing it was doing, and it's like, whoa, this is really trippy. But I was so tired, and it was like, I remember it was like orange, and it was like a glitter lamp, and that was, I don't know why, just because my eyes were tired and the muscles were doing weird things, I guess. That's what I was seeing. But I told my mom, got her off the phone after like 5 minutes, and then dozed off almost immediately, and then got another phone call like an hour later that was like just a spam call. It's like, son of a bitch, I just really want to sleep right now. Anyway, when I got back on the road, we did skip rush hour. However, we probably should have stayed and slept longer. But I ended up, I think, texted my aunt asked me a question, and then I sent her a message, and then I think she ended up calling me. So it was like, beyond that, it's like I was always either on the phone with my mom, my aunt, or my brother. It's like, keep talking, because I can talk to people, and that is okay, but listening to music was like okay for a little span of time in there. But then I got to a point where it's like, yeah, music's not doing it either, Got Gracie in to do the Bartman. And the other one, she got really into Shake Senora by Pitbull, I think. And yeah, it's like those were good, but I had this like span of time. It's like I couldn't move my head either way, because it's like just like the change, like I don't know, whatever, like the change of what I'm looking at was like, it was affecting me in a not good way. It was like, this just makes me really tired. I need to not look anywhere else that is not necessary for this driving path right now. So yeah, no car dancing. That was that was not helpful. So we just mainly stayed on the phone, because of course the kid was asleep, so I couldn't talk to her either. It was kind of funny, because on the way out there, she was playing with playing Roblox with one of her friends, and all night long. It was like, when we stopped at Buc-ee's, that was when that stopped, because she apparently there was some bottles of water that were on her door. She had a can of liquid death water, and she wanted me to put it up here, and I was like, what you could do is take the bottles of water out of the door and put it in the door, and then you can have your drink, and then when you want your drink, it's already there with you. What happened? I mean, that did happen, but I didn't specify where to go with the water, because ideally she would have put them under the seat in front of her, but she did not. And at one point she stepped on one of them, and it flooded the back floorboard. And no idea until she went to plug her iPad in, because it was like 2% or something, and got a message about liquid detected. It's like, what? It's like, oh. So, I was thinking anything else, because I didn't know she'd stepped on the water bottle. I didn't know she just put them down there. In hindsight, she's 9. I should have been a little more specific. Didn't think about it. Just we just went with it. So, yeah. So anyway, after that, since she couldn't charge her iPad, and of course that was like 7 o'clock in the morning it was 7 o'clock in the morning at Buc-ee's when we started to try to nap. So I don't know what time we got there. And there's like this whole routine. So, because of course we get to a gas station, me and the kid got a potty. Then I got to fill up the gas tank. Then we got to move to whatever section we, need to be at to walk the dogs or potty the dogs or whatever. So it's like this whole ordeal. So it ended up being a really handy thing that we didn't all have to, that we didn't have to stick with my brother in the moving truck. He had to be there at a different time than we did. He ended up getting there at 12:30 because he was, hauling ass. He had to get there. Which, of course, they got the thing on the truck where he said he couldn't go higher than 76 miles an hour. It's like, hey, at least you got that. Just roll with it. But yeah, it's like we were stopping. It's like it was taking us so long at these breaks. Okay, because like at the Buc-ee's stop, what we did was we stopped, and Gracie and I went in and went to the bathroom. Then went back out and filled up the gas tank. Then we pulled up to the area where we walked the dogs around this little pond thing, which was an ordeal too. It's a fun little moment. But then Gracie saw the sign that said, beware of snakes and stay away from the water, and, snakes may be in the tall grass and blah, blah, blah. And she is terrified of snakes. So then she was like obsessed the entire 15 minutes around this pond, which 15 minutes mainly because the dogs were sniffing everything. And I was like, dude, it's okay. It's no big deal. It's like, they're probably not going to be on the path. They just want you to be aware that there might be some in the area so you don't go down by the water. And, we made it all the way around. And I said, okay. I said, did you see any snakes? Because she was like grabbing onto my arm and like just the whole time, just like a raw nerve. And I was like, all right, did you see any snakes? And she said, no. And I said, that was 15 minutes where you were busy worrying about something that ended up not happening. It's like, that's also a good lesson for me. But a little learning lesson in the moment. Look, you can't control whether something's going to happen or not. The point of the thing wasn't to be terrified of it the whole time. It was to know that there was a chance of this thing that could happen. You might stumble across a snake. If you do these things, you probably won't. But she saw snake. She obsessed the entire time. And she made my walk more stressful too, because she kept grabbing my arm and just doing this. It's like, kid, it is okay. I promise you. And I said, I showed you the picture of the snake in the side lot at Grandma's house, right? I don't know if I had or not, but it's like, there was a little garter snake back in April. And I remember seeing it and thinking, it is awfully chilly for the snake to be out here, even though it's sunning itself. And it wasn't moving. And I was like, is it dead? And I kind of poked it with a stick. It was not dead. It came to life pretty quick after that. But, it was very slow moving because it was so damn cold still. And I built this little stick fort around it, so I knew where it was at. And then I went and I think I got the little grabbers. Because if I knew that it wasn't a dangerous snake, I would probably just grab it and move it. I didn't know that. What I should have done is I shouldn't have poked it. I should have just gotten a stick and tried to grab it by its head and flipped it over by the burn pile. I mean, there's a big mound of wood that's been there for years, and I don't know that it's worth shit now. But that's where it ended up going once I got the grabbers. But it had a lot more life in it once it knew I was there. But yeah, grabbed the little grabbers and took it over to set it on a log so it could be out in the sun even. I think it went into hiding from there, but still. I was like, she didn't know about that snake. It's like, she still enjoyed playing in the backyard right next to it. But yeah, it wasn't at the same time. But yeah, anyway, it's completely irrelevant. I'm at an hour and a half. That's what I do. I thought this was actually going to be shorter today because I didn't think I had had much to talk about, but apparently I had more to talk about than I thought. And I didn't go to focus on the negative shit like I almost always do. So yay me. But yeah, all that said, August is my focus on writing. And I had a little post on Instagram where I put my pictures on there and put a little blurb about when I accidentally send myself messages that are more than what I thought they were. But then I think I'm going to not be on Instagram for August very much, because it's really just like a mind suck. It doesn't do anything. It's like I'm not really benefiting by spending the time on here. Sometimes it's helpful to stay in the know, I guess, but really it's not doing anything but distracting me from what I know I'm supposed to be doing, which is the writing. So, August, I'm focusing on the writing. And I think also the affirmations, and I don't know what this loud ass bird is over here. But that actually makes me think, when we were in Oklahoma, oh my god, oh, this light sucks. When we were in Oklahoma, we were moving my brother's stuff out of the moving truck and into the house, right? And there was this bird, I think it was a mockingbird, that had been listening to a car alarm. And it just like kept going. It's like, well, at least it sounds prettier than a car alarm does. But you can definitely tell what it's been listening to. And that thing was like nonstop for like every time I went out, the first day and a half anyway. It's like after, I don't know when it stopped. Anyway, it was there. He left, obviously. I think it was a red-winged blackbird, because I think that's what I saw go past. Though I didn't see the red or the yellow. I just saw the black. But anyway, yeah, so I also, when I got back, there's another concert that I was wanting to go to. And Falling in Reverse is coming to Indy. And I was all excited. And then I was like, see, I've been dragging my feet about getting tickets, because it was like, I don't know if I will still be around. I feel like, I've said many times, I feel like once my brother, his move happens, everything else is going to happen fairly quickly. But it was like, I don't know anything on this, right? So the other day I was like, I want to go to this concert. And it partly helped probably because, okay, so I have my skate playlist that I listen to the most when I'm skating now. And I have like 3 skate playlists. And it's the newest one. And there's like more of a variety to it. And this time I added the thing where Spotify throws random shit into your playlist that wasn't actually in your playlist. But since you like these songs, maybe you'll also like this, right? And I loved all the songs, but some of them I just didn't want to listen to at the moment, right? But anyway, that's not even relevant for this anyway. One of the songs that I had added recently, never heard it, I don't think, was a song by Falling in Reverse called Trigger Warning. And it came on when I was driving. It's like, oh my god, I love this song. Right? And I did what I do. I played it on repeat for a long time. I don't know how long. It was a while. Probably not 45 minutes, though I'm not above that. And I say that just because there was something time-wise with bathroom break and all that stuff. And it was like, all right, time to move to another song. But got really hooked on it. And noticed a couple days ago, the runtime is 2 minutes and 22 seconds. So, hey, there's my repeating numbers again. But, yeah, love that song. Anyway, when I got back home, Okay, so I got to town and I stopped at the gas station. Okay, when I stopped at the gas station, it had not rained at all the entire drive out there or back until I was on 52 coming back to town. I was like, I was at a point, it's like, I really gotta pee. I was practically dancing. It's like, all right, I have to stop at the gas station, and I'm gonna run to the bathroom, and then, I'll fill up the tank and then go back home. So I did that. And of course, the only time it rained, and it rained the hardest, was when I was getting out of the car and running into the store. And I was like, shit. Because then, of course, it's cold after that. Especially when I went into the building with the air conditioning on. But yeah, so there was that. When I got home, I think it was like 5:30 by the time I was going to bed. And I just started thinking about it. It's like, I really want to go to that concert. So I'm going to go to that concert. Fuck it. So I bought another concert. This time, I only bought one concert ticket because I'm planning ahead of time that I'm going by myself. But because everything's jacked up from last year. Last year, I went and saw Five Finger Death Punch in Marilyn Manson, and I did not have to pay for parking. This time I had to pay for parking. However, since I ended up in the parking lot that you would have had to pay, yeah, I mean, there's the orange lot and the blue lot, and the orange lot apparently is the premier parking. I ended up in that parking lot, and I had no idea how I got there. It was this whole ass ordeal trying to get to the other lot. Actually, I don't know. Anyway, I was somewhere I wasn't supposed to be last year. This time I got to pay for them. So this time I'm pretty sure that was the one that I ended up in that I wasn't in. But this time I just went ahead and bought the ticket that has the better parking. So I don't have to walk as far by myself. Because while it wasn't a problem or anything, it was still a bit of a hike. And fuck that. Since I'm not getting a ticket for anybody else to go with me this time. Because the last 2 times I bought 2 concert tickets for like metal concerts, I went by myself. And then, yeah. This time I'm just going by myself. But yeah, I figured that'll be my point of after this, then I'll probably get back on Instagram at least long enough to post pictures. So who knows? I don't know. If there's anything big that comes up between now and then, I might get on to post some things to remember again. If I don't, fuck it, who cares? Right? So, yeah. Anyway, I have seen a ton of repeating numbers in this. And all the way out to Oklahoma and all the way back. All over the place. And my brother was seeing them too. And it was funny because at one point we went to Sonic and the total was $31.33, so I put he tipped $2 so to have it the even 3333. I said, "Oh, I see what you did there." He said, "You got me catching these all the time now." I was like, "Yeah." I said, "Now that you notice and now that you know it means you're in alignment and you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, you're really going to be catching them all the time." So anyway, on that note, this has been a long ass video and I wasn't expecting it to be this long at all. But that's what my August is potentially looking like. Whole lot of focus on writing, and the meditation and affirmations thing, and focusing on what I'm supposed to be doing and doing the things, right? It's time to suck it up and do the things. And that's what I'm doing. And on that note, I'm going to call it a day. As always, I appreciate you. Until the next time. See ya.